I can do that. That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, Cynthia. Second?
Second.
Okay, I don't know who that is, so thank you. And then with masks on, I can't see who's talking. So any objections? Okay, hearing none, then we'll proceed with the agenda as being approved. We have some minutes.
That the minutes of the board meeting held on October the 13th, 2021 be adopted.
Thank you, Cynthia. Second? Did anybody second? I'm not hearing anything.
Rick, second.
Thank you, Rick. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, then we have another set.
It's the summary minutes of the special in-camera meeting held on 2021 be adopted.
Thank you. Ian, right?
Yeah, second.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All those any objections? Okay, hearing none, then we have one more.
That the summary minutes of the special in-camera board held on October 21st, 2021 be adopted.
Thank you, Cynthia. A seconder for that.
Second, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, then we will accept them. So that brings us to our announcements. So for myself, chairperson remarks, I would like by introducing our new superintendent, and congratulations, Chris Nicholson. Yay! So welcome, Chris. Again, I look forward to continue to work with you. I had another announcement just regarding the Q&A. If anyone had any of the public have any questions as they relate to this agenda, you can email them to board@sd48.bc.ca, and we will do our best to get to them at the end of the agenda. If they are a lengthy response required, then we will have a follow-up email to you, but we will do our best to answer what we can today. We, of course, welcome all other questions that you can send those to the board as well at sd48.bc.ca, and we will have a staff respond to you as well. So thank you. That is all that I have. So that brings us to trustee remarks, and I believe Vice Chair Higgins has an update for us.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I do have a few things to report on. I'd like to start just quickly giving a little report on how happy I am to have had the opportunity to visit a couple of schools in the last little while. I had a visit at Mamquam, where I had an opportunity to connect with Principal Maynard, and he's new at Mamquam. And so that was lovely to see that new relationship developing. A new principal at a new, well, he's not a new principal, but a new principal at that school. Everything seems fantastic there. The kids seemed happy. COVID is, of course, playing a role, and you wouldn't even know it. It just seems like normal school, but kids are wearing masks, which is odd, but it just is really heartwarming and inspiring to see all of our staff working so hard to make things really fantastic for our children at these schools. And I had the same feeling when I visited Spring Creek. The new principal there, Mr. Tunisi, he seems quite lovely and fitting in beautifully to their community. And again, I'm just remarkably impressed by the work of our staff to make the students in our schools feel comfortable and to be learning in difficult and challenging times. I think it's a real attribute to everyone that we have such committed staff, and that the kids are having the opportunity to attend school in person. So that was really lovely to see all of that good and positive stuff happening at those two schools. And the other two things I've been asked to report on tonight are the Ministry of Education Joint Partners group meeting, which I attended on behalf of Rebecca. She unfortunately was unable to attend, but I feel that I was very fortunate to get to attend in her place. It was a really interesting day. There were some remarks from Minister Whiteside, who is the Minister for Education, for those of you who aren't aware. She had an excellent discussion on reconciliation through the BC Tripartite Education Agreement and the Declaration Act. It focused on her topic, her conversation focused on what reconciliation is, what we are reconciling, and what work is moving us towards reconciliation. This was followed by a presentation from Lisa McCullough on the framework for enhanced student learning. She wanted to highlight in her talk that this year all districts are required to implement the framework and that all districts will have their education plans reviewed. And in groups, we gave some feedback as to how the education plans are going to be looked at. There was, following up on that, there was a presentation on equity in education. And the final presentation of the day was on anti-racism, which I think is a very prominent conversation in our communities these days. It was interesting, it was informative, and it highlighted 5 key elements, which were honoring Indigenous rights and sovereignty, building collaborative partnerships, amplifying the voices of those who have lived experiences, demonstrating humility and respect, and applying evidence-based decision-making to create change. It was fantastic, really interesting and insightful. And for trustees, the slides are all available on the hub. So you can take a look there if you want to get more information. I also have been asked to report out on the BCPC symposium, which was also fantastic, very insightful, lots of good learning that took place there. Some of the topics that were covered were equity and inclusion and diversity, often referred to as the EDI. The highlight of that topic would be that once we acknowledge where our needs for growth are, we need to learn from those and think critically and search for data, and then we can act on those, challenging our assumptions and using our privilege to make change. This was followed by an excellent report from Dr. Jyothi Samara, who talked on employee health and wellness. She really emphasized that coming out of COVID, we may see that there's a lot more stressors than we were previously aware of, and that we need to be cognizant of the fact that we may need to implement some services to fully support all people. There was an excellent presentation on the topic of freedom of expression, followed by another presentation from Minister Whiteside, which was again very, very well done, very interesting. She did talk about all of the great work that's being done in all of the districts. Dr. Gustafson reported on the state of health, talking about overall good vaccine rates. I think that COVID was definitely the main focus of her talk, obviously. What else, guys? There's quite a bit of information at BCPC around upcoming events that have to do with things that are happening within our sector. Excellent presentation on professional boundaries within the K-12 sector as well. Talking about how relationships can be complex and that we have to be careful and cognizant and respectful of all of those relationships. And then the day was finished off by reviewing some of the case law that's happened in the province of British Columbia. And that's all I have for now.
Well, that's great, Cynthia. Thank you for covering for me as well. So that brings us to our superintendent's remarks. Mr. Superintendent, you're up.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to remove the mask. I do have a few fantastic things to share about what's going on in the district, but I did want to first of all thank the board and all those that had input into the selection process for selecting me. I'm honored and humbled, and I just want to recommit that I will strive to be worthy of that trust that's been put in me, and I take this role very, very seriously. So with that, I have 5 main things I wanted to share. Of course, I'd like to recognize that we observed National Indigenous Veterans Day on November 8th in honor of the contributions and sacrifices made by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis soldiers and veterans in their long history of service to Canada. And earlier today, Remembrance Day ceremonies were observed at schools across the district in honor of the sacrifice of all those in the armed forces who have served our country in times of conflict. Secondly, on October 22nd, all the elementary schools in our great district participated in a cross-country running meet at Garibaldi Highlands Elementary. We had over 200 runners participating. And if you'd like to take a look, you can go to our news and events section on the district website to check out some fantastic photos of this event. Last week, the season continued with a race at Myrtle Phillip Elementary. So thanks to all of the school coaches for organizing these events for our elementary students, and a special shout out to Lisa Manzini for coordinating the season itself. Thirdly, on October the 29th, Brackendale Elementary's Daycare Neighbors and Friends gifted Brackendale Elementary School a handmade peace wreath that was accompanied by the following letter, which I'd like to read. As mentioned in the BC Early Learning Framework, children develop a sense of place when they connect with their local communities. With an intention to create meaningful relationships within our community, the children and educators of Brackendale Childcare created this peace wreath. It signifies our sincere thanks and gratitude for sharing this space that we collectively live, work, and study as visitors on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories, lands, and waters of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam peoples. We hope to continue to engage in a collaborative, meaningful educational journey together. Hacha, which means thank you. And that was from Vanessa, Suki, Jade, and the entire childcare class. And again, on the district website and the Brackendale Elementary School website, under the news and events section, you can find some photos of this beautiful handmade peace wreath. Fourth, I'd just like to give a plug for our district parent advisory council, who are actively looking for members to fill both executive positions and members at large. We absolutely appreciate the work of DPAC and of course of local school PACs, and encourage anyone interested to get in touch with DPAC. You can find their contact information by clicking on DPAC and PAC in the drop-down menu under the Families tab on the homepage of the district website. And finally, I'd like to let everyone know that November is Adoption Awareness Month. We received a letter from the Office of the Provincial Director of Child Welfare, from which I'll close with the following quote. November is Adoption Awareness Month. This month is about raising awareness for adoption in British Columbia and celebrating the families who have welcomed children and youth as permanent members of their families. The government of British Columbia thanks everyone involved in Sea to Sky for their continued leadership in supporting adoptive families, and wishes to recognize all of the individuals who have grown their family and their hearts through adoption, and to all those who may do so in the future. Thank you very much.
Well, that's great. Thank you. You've been busy. So that brings us to our Secretary Treasurer's remarks. Danielle?
Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that concludes our announcements and brings us to our receiving delegations. So we have Leanne Jinnapin, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Bobby Joe Bergstrom on behalf of the House Health Secretary Dry Grad Committee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leanne Jinnapin, and as mentioned, I'm here with my co-chair, Bobby Joe Bergstrom. And we're here to ask the school board to consider our request to make the Dry Grad Parade and Prom for 2022 a sanctioned event. Within my application, I did submit sort of a bit of a layout around what we were hoping to do this year. And I'm just not sure if everybody has had the opportunity to see that and review that, or if that's something that you would like Bobby Joe and I to present to the board tonight. So if somebody could confirm that.
We did receive the request is in our in the package. But if maybe you want to walk us through a little bit of it.
Sure. So our hope for the Dry Grad event is going to be a parade again, similar to what happened last year. Just because it was such a successful event, lots of great feedback from the grads from last year, as well as people within the community, that they really wanted to see that back again this year. So we are hoping to reverse the order this year, and we will be starting at Don Ross Middle School and turning left out of the parking lot, and then onto Ross Road, left onto Government, and then we would stay on Government Road all the way through, and then turning left into the Howe Sound parking lot. And once we arrive back there, so I should mention for the parade as well, that we will be having RCMP lead that parade for us, as well as an RCMP member at the end of that parade. No students will be driving the vehicles that we will have in the parade. And we have also reached out to Squamish Nation to see if they would be able to have police in the middle of our procession towing a ceremonial canoe to recognize their special graduates. And so then once we get to the Howe Sound secondary parking lot, that's where the graduates will go through the security checkpoints. And I'll let Bobby Joe actually speak to the point of security a little bit further, as she's the one that's been communicating with them. But so just they'll go through the security checkpoint, and then we will be going to the roundhouse. And as mentioned, Bobby will talk about the security piece to that, but there will be security on the premises in multiple locations to ensure that nothing that they are not supposed to have on site, liquor, drugs, cigarettes, don't make it onto the premises. And once we arrive, we're going to do some mocktails and some mingling. And then we are going to be serving dinner around 6:30, thinking that will wrap up around sort of 7:38. And then we have the hypnotist from 8 until 9:30. And then from 9:30 to midnight, the event will end at midnight. We're going to have a DJ and some additional entertainment for the students as well. And they have actually chosen a theme of Vegas this year. So we will be looking into the possibility of maybe doing some prizes. We know that we obviously can't have active gambling. There'll be no money involved, but that was one of the questions that we had for the board this evening, was if we did go with the Vegas theme and wanted to bring in to maybe hire the Rotary to come in and do some games with the kids, that we would have tokens or tickets. And then at the end of the night, they could cash their tickets in for prizes that have been donated or purchased by the grad committee. That's sorry, I should have mentioned too that the parade we're hoping to start for 4 o'clock. Bobby, did you want to add to that?
Hi, Bobby Joe here. Yes, so do you want me to add with the security stuff now? I can get into that. We've been
Anything I've missed as well?
Yeah, no, you've got most of that there. We'll be working with Black Tusk Security. Who have done the event in the past, and so we'll be working with Black Tusk Security, and we will have them on site at Howe Sound at 4:30, so before we are intended to arrive back from the parade. And their role there will be to be responsible for the security check and loading the students onto the buses. So they will do the check of their person, making sure to check pockets and that sort of thing, and making sure that everybody's on the bus safely loaded. And then they will transport them to the Railway Museum, which one guard will escort that bus to the Roundhouse. And when they're at the Roundhouse, there will be a guard at the entrance to the into the Roundhouse property where the bridge is. And currently our plan is to have a guard station there, and no one is going to be permitted to access that bridge area unless they have authorization to come through, whether they're a volunteer that's been signed up. So students will not be coming in that way. They will be loaded at Howe Sound and taken directly to the Roundhouse. And then the plan is to have, we're unsure of right now how many guards particularly we want to have, but we will have a guard at every entrance within the Roundhouse. So the entrance and the 2 exits. And then there was a possibility of us having guards in the actual event circulating. However, we think that we're aiming to have between 50 and 100 parent volunteers. And we're hoping to use those volunteers to also help us do some of that responsibility of circulating. And we're also going to have, in terms of looking at security within the facility, we're going to have 2 parents stationed in each washroom, so that is, I know in the past that's been an area where there's been some concern. So we thought that we would have 2 parents there supervising the washrooms at all times, and also in the balcony area and at each of the trains, because that's a stipulation of the park, and just making sure all the exits are covered. Students won't be allowed to enter and exit the event. Once they're finished, they'll no longer be there. They'll be done for the evening. And then as Leanne was saying, this is a drug and alcohol free event. It will also be smoking and vaping free as well. So that won't be permitted for this event. And then in terms of on site for the actual event, we will have like a first aid station where there will be parents stationed there as well. And that's where we will organize for the release of students. Parents will be permitted to come over at the end, which will be at midnight, like Leanne said, is our proposed finish time. And parents will have to sign their children out with us, or have a registered authorized person that we can release them to. And they'll do that right from the actual venue. And the security will stay until the end of the evening. So once everybody has been released to their parent. And I think that is it for our security plan.
Except sort of the only other thing that I did want to mention is that on Thursday, when the kids go to Brennan Park to do their rehearsal for their commencement ceremonies, that's going to be the only that they have to bring anything that they feel like they may need at the Roundhouse, because when they're getting security checked to get onto those buses, they're actually not allowed to have anything but their person and their cell phone. And so if they want to have a change of clothes, different shoes, all of that stuff, they're going to bring and bag it. And then we will have parent volunteers that will be going through everything. And then that will be secured after everything has been checked. And we will be transporting that over to the Roundhouse. So they'll have no access to any of that stuff from when they drop it off till Thursday to when they arrive at the Roundhouse on Saturday, the 18th of June. I think that's a
Yeah,
bit.
I forgot to mention that all volunteers and parents will have to have a criminal record check prior to being able to volunteer for both the parade and the dry grad at the Roundhouse.
And so I guess just in finishing, we just wanted to say that we understand the importance and the significance of whether you permit us to have this event sanctioned. And so we just wanted to reassure you that we will be in full compliance with the board policy 607, as well as following any additional regulations and procedures. And we will be, as the guidelines and regulations change for COVID, there will be, we will be honoring those guidelines as well. And so all of the parent volunteers and any of the students that come, security will all have to be proof of vaccination, just because that is part of the provincial guideline now. And the Roundhouse has asked that everybody be vaccinated.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You have definitely done your homework on this. And I just want to say that I've always been very impressed with how the House Sound PAC has worked with the principal, have worked with staff, have really did due diligence on the delivery. So I'm going to see if any of my fellow trustees have any questions or comments. Cynthia?
If I could ask one question, I'm wondering with respect to the vaccine passports, are there exemptions or considerations for students who maybe are not vaccinated? I'm not sure, you may not have the answer to that, and maybe that's just something to think about for the future.
It was actually one of the other moms on our parent grad committee that has communicated with the Roundhouse, and my understanding, by following the provincial guidelines, there are no exceptions. But we can just confirm that.
If I could have a follow-up question, I guess it may be just as food for thought, you might want to consider how you are, like what will happen to those students who don't have a vaccine passport. And you don't have to answer right now, that's just something to think about.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, were there any other questions or comments?
It's Rick here. Whoa. So in the past, you guys are probably already aware of this, but I think someone has their mic on. No, I have mine on. In the past, a problem that past groups have run into is students who consume alcohol before coming to the event. So a scenario we know has happened is that the parents have provided a student with a glass of wine or two at dinner before the event has happened. And I'm just alerting you to something you probably already know about, but hoping that you'll be alert to that possibility, or your security people will be alert to that possibility, and I'm sure they are. But I just wanted to mention it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I'll just comment. So if there are no other comments, just to let the organizers know, first of all, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation, very comprehensive. And as Rebecca said, I'm always impressed with House Sound. You do a great job in keeping our kids safe and providing a fantastic evening. So next step is staff will actually take a look at your proposal, and we're happy to also work with you and the principal around working with the Roundhouse for a possible exemption, because as you know, we are an inclusive district. We wouldn't want to see any students excluded because this could be for health reasons, etc. So we're happy to follow up with you and even on your behalf and work with you on that. And then if we have any further questions from a staff perspective, we'll follow up with you on those and try to get back to you to the board in as timely manner as possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Just
Chris.
how long does it take for us to know when we will be a sanctioned event?
Chris, are you able to respond to that?
For sure, for sure. So again, I know the absolutely recognizes that people are very eager to get going. Usually with the delegation, it's usually at the next board meeting that you would receive a response. However, given that you want to get going, we will do our best to get back to you much quicker. But I obviously can't give you that date yet because I'll have to follow up with my team around where we want to go moving forward. But it will be sooner than a month from now for sure.
That's helpful. Thank you. We just wanted to know a timeline of what we're looking at, because some of the things that you guys have brought up this evening are definitely things we've spoken to as a community. The group already is just sort of addressing vaccines. Definitely has been a hot conversation for us. So definitely would be good to know if there was things that we needed to look at there in advance, because we'll definitely work towards seeing how we can work within what you guys would like to see as well.
Great, thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming in and presenting, and we will get back to you very soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Okay. Had to go back. So then that brings us on to our student staff presentations, as we don't have any. Trustee items. Don't see anything there. So that brings us to our board committees. So it starts with our committee of the whole. We met earlier today and reviewed our upcoming calendars. We had a report on the provincial council from Trustee Kent. We discussed our ed sessions for the following year. And then we also talked about our procedures to responding to questions and correspondence from the public outside of board meetings. So we talked about our trustee code of conduct and the policy, which will be up for review in coming months, and then how to best respond to questions. And then we talked about questions that come from our other public, our other open meetings. So like as in the committee of the whole and finance policy and such, on how or if to receive delegations or questions from there. And then there was a conversation behind the framework review process. So I think Cynthia touched on that a bit earlier as well. And I think that was it. I'm not sure if anyone wanted to add anything, or did I miss anything there? Okay, then hearing none, we have there's a recommendation that's there.
But we recommend that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on October 13th, 2021 be accepted.
Thank you, Ian. Second?
Second, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, then that is accepted. So that brings us to our policy committee. Did not meet today. Nothing to report on. Finance committee didn't meet, but there is a motion, a recommendation that's there.
That the minutes of the finance committee meeting held on October 13th, 2021 be accepted.
Thank you, Rick. Give me a second.
I'll second it. See you.
Thank you, Ian. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, then we'll accept those minutes. The Indigenous Education Council doesn't have anything to report at this time. There will be a meeting later this month, though. PR committee, don't think there's anything to report. Early learning committee, I don't think there's anything to report there right now. So that brings us to item 8, our general. We don't have any business arising, but now we'll get into our information items. So we have the COVID-19 update. Marilyn, I see you were there.
Thanks, Rebecca. Philip Clark and myself and trustee Bonnie met online with Dr. Alex Choi on October 22nd. And this was specifically for the Sea to Sky and Vancouver Coastal Health area, but really for us focusing on our school district area. Her report at that time said the rates of diagnosis were slow and there was a steady decline in cases. Not as rapid, of course, as what they wanted, but there still was a steady decline. And there still have been no transmissions within our schools in the school district. Of course, we know that we have had not outbreaks, but individual cases in the schools. All of those cases have been determined to have been spread during community events, such as birthday parties or Thanksgiving dinners. So the report from her was that our protocols are working in the schools, and of course, we're hoping everything to start to slow down even more as the vaccination rates go up. And speaking of vaccination rates, the vaccination rates for people 18 years old and older was 86% at double vaccinated as of October 7th. So that's over a month ago now. And for 18 and old, 12 to 17, 72%. So all in all, over the hour and a half, I think we were on there, she said our schools remain some of the safest places for the children to be. In fact, when they're in community for, let's say, a break, we know that we're going to have an increase in cases when they come back because it's still in community where kids are receiving transmission. And that's all I had.
Okay, well, thank you, Marilyn. That's great news. So that'll bring us to, were there any questions for Marilyn? No, okay, so that brings us to our local education agreement update. So it looks like Karen and Danielle are up for that. Is Karen with us?
I don't think Karen's was able to make it, so I'll give an update.
Okay, thank
Both
you.
of us. Okay, so I'm very excited to announce that our local education agreement we're going to be having an official signing next Thursday evening. So yeah, invites have gone out to that, and I can say personally, I will be there to attend and I will be signing that day. So I'm very excited that we've gotten to this point where we have this agreement with Lil Watts, and then once everything is signed, then the financial implications related to that will take place. So yeah, that's it for me for the update on that. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a comment from me, actually, and I know the amount of work that went behind getting this agreement in place, and I applaud staff for all the work, and I am just sorry that I will not be there for the signing, but appreciate the vice chair for attending in my place. So thank you.
A question.
Yep, go ahead.
At the Tizio Learning Center. Do you have your invite, Rick?
I think I
Okay, great.
Okay, so then that brings us to our tripartite transportation agreement update.
Yeah, so I can give a quick update on that. So we've received we have three agreements in place. With one with Lil Watt, the Naquaqua and Squamish Nations. So we have 3 tripartite agreements in place that we've submitted to the Ministry of Education, and we should be receiving funding for that before Christmas. And then we also worked closely with School District 78, Fraser Cascade, to get funding for Qualicum as well. Calhoun, sorry. for the Calcum School. So this one will be a little bit different as in prior years for Calcum. We received the funding and then we gave it directly to the nation, but this time it's going to be Fraser Cascade that's receiving the funding for this. So, but we managed to get all 4 agreements in place, so that's excellent.
Okay, were there any questions? Just again, I know the amount of work that goes behind all that, and I applaud your efforts, and this really speaks to the relationships that we have with our Indigenous communities. Thank you. Okay, so it moves us on to enrollment update, and Marilyn, I think you're up.
Thanks, Rebecca. So the board has received an update in a preliminary sense from Paul Lorette earlier in the school year. So this is where we're at, the lay of the land now. And Archie's just getting it ready. Now there's just a few short slides here to bring you up to date on where we are with the number of kids in our school district. So the first slide we have here is just our K-12 enrollment by head count. So we have approximately 5,138 resident school age kids, including DL K-9. That's a 2% increase from September 30th, 2020 actuals, and a 2.6% increase from projected enrollment. And as we know, schools are usually really, really good at their projected enrollments, but they may tend to just hedge on the side of caution, so they've done a good job there. That's an actual increase of 100 resident students, and we have 175 international students, and that's FTE. Okay, so now we've got a slide that shows us the total enrollment over the last year since 2014, and you can see it's on a steady incline. And anybody who's been watching this for any period of time, that number 42, and I think even the year before it was down, we never got into the 39s, I don't think, but maybe down to 41. And then we had that period of declining enrollment that just about, really took us for a loop and caused all those reconfigurations with schools and things like that. But now you see we're on the rise again. And so we're at 5,138. And now, of course, the board's grappling with the other end of the thing. Where are all the kids going to go as they come forward? And we know there's lots of kids to come. So that's a good, healthy number. Now, so Paul has actually created this PowerPoint or these slides, and he's showing you here that in Pemberton, that's the green line, pretty much we've stayed steady. And maybe even a tiny little decline that could be, well, there's maybe, yeah, it could be explained on where those students have gone, but we won't get into that for today. And then in Whistler, it's the same thing. It's kind of stayed just a little bit up and down, where the real growth, and of course, you know it more than anybody because you're grappling with it, has been in Squamish. It's a difference of 500 children over the last number of years. And so 500 children is more than a school, right? So it's a lot of kids there. So where's she? Okay, so this is the French immersion chart, and you can see we've had some real growth over those middle 3 years, and it plateaued. So that would be when your early French immersion started, right? That would be accounting for that, and so we've had more children in the system in French immersion starting a few years ago with early immersion. Okay, and here again are the 3 communities, and as we know, in Pemberton and in Whistler, the growth has been steady, but not overwhelmingly so. A slight incline, but kind of plateauing. But once again, it's in Squamish, and it makes sense with the general numbers that are here with the growth in general, but also again with the early immersion. Okay, this is a fun one to watch when you first look at it, you say, what is it? So colorful. But the things that jump out at you, you might not be able to see it at the bottom, which the schools are, but the big tall one is Don Ross at 681 students, and Howe Sound right beside it at 612. And then coincidentally, GHE and Whistler Secondary both have 531 children. So, and then the others that you can see are your other elementary schools and some of our smaller schools, such as Blackwater Creek and Distance Learning and SSA, etc., and Learning Expeditions. So that's just kind of a fun one to keep an eye on. I think that's it, isn't it, Darcy? That's the last one. Okay. So, do we ask if there's any questions? Where's Rebecca? I'm looking up here. If there are any questions, because the next thing is the 1701 budget. So I don't know.
Okay, were there any questions on the enrollment update? Nope, not seeing anything. Marilyn, you did a great job.
Paul, I hope you're pleased.
We're going on to 1701.
Yeah, okay, so we'll have a look at the 1701, and maybe if something comes up in the middle, you just give me a little hand up or something, because you might have some questions as we go along. So Philip Clark has prepared this for us, and so this is in response to giving the board an update where we are with our special ed numbers, and also a little bit of a deeper dive into where the funding comes from and where it goes. But not to say it's a forensic audit of that. It's still fairly up here because it's a complicated system. But nonetheless, let's give it a go here. Okay, so Phil started by giving us some background. Chris and I were talking earlier today. I don't think there's a part of our funding formula or our system really that's audited a bit as heavily as the special education section is, because you've got the designation part of it, you've got the service delivery part of it, and then you've got all the action paperwork that has to be in line, and we're subject to audit every few years, as we know, for that. So right now, so he's put it in order to provide an inclusive education system in which students with special needs are fully participating members of a community of learners. Additional support may be required by the means of additional staff or specialized learning materials, physical accommodations or equipment, and assessments to enable them to meet their educational and social needs. I'm pretty sure that's coming straight out of our special ed manual for the 1701. Thanks, Archie. Okay, so not to just read slides here, but really appreciate the background information. But Phil he's designed this presentation so that you can see the three levels of funding that come for students with special needs. So he's speaking to the special needs funding in addition to the basic allocation. So we know we get the per pupil allocation for schools, that's to run our schools, and then through the designation process for individual student needs, we get special needs support under the criteria of the Ministry of Education's special education policies and procedures. So the funds themselves, and it's always kind of an awkward thing to talk about because a child has a designation when the school district gets additional funds to support the child. But also those funds are also developed to develop systems in schools to develop a broad base of children's needs to address those in the school. So yeah, it's just always a little bit of a disconnect, and we know the ministry is struggling with different funding models, but that's the one we've got right now. Okay, so so we've got three levels of funding that come for children with designated special needs. Level 1 funding is for children with the highest level of need. We would have very few students with this high level of need, if any, in a school district or even in a province. And the categories are called A and B. So A is physically dependent, B is both deaf and blind. Phil's going to show you, I'm going to show it to you, a slide in a minute that's going to show you the numbers of students that we have in these areas. That is cut off on the slide, but level 1 funding is about $42,000. So that actually kind of fits into almost somebody who would need complete assistance during a school day. So that funding, if we had students with those needs, would probably go directly to having somebody with that child all day. Level 2 funding, there are 5 categories there. You can see them: moderate to profound intellectual disability, physical disability or chronic health, vision impairments, significant deaf and hard of hearing impairments, and autism spectrum disorder. And that level 2 funding is $21,280 for someone who has, according to the criteria of the Ministry of Education, meets that criteria. And then level 3 is $10,750, and it's for children with intensive behavior interventions or serious mental illness. And of course, we know there are all kinds of other children with diverse needs in our school, and that's where we use our per pupil funding. We use all the rest of the funding that comes to schools, and we develop systems within a school to address those. So that could be children with learning disabilities or in the gifted range, or have moderate or mild behavior challenges, or just kids who need some help with reading. So, and that's what Philip is basically saying here in this slide, that some of the categories don't get funded. We still assess them, and we're still accountable to all those checks and balances with an IEP and everything that's involved with them, but we don't receive supplemental funding for them. How are we doing there, Archie? Did anybody have any questions up until now? No? Okay. Yes.
Just something to keep in mind. The last slide, you were showing the amount of
Yeah,
money that
yeah.
is given per
Yeah.
designation. Jog my memory and tell me what the average range would be, for example, an annual salary for an EA.
Okay, so that's, I know where you're going with that question. So if you, and I don't know the actual annual salary, but I can tell you that let's say that when I just mentioned that 42,000, and a child who might need full-time assistance all day long. I know that we're going to get to this part of the presentation. In addition to the regular funding that's there and the per pupil, it's not enough to cover a full-time teaching assistant. So the school district says, we kick in. We're going to make sure those children have that support, the support they need. And they do it in those 2 really high levels of need, but they do it in we do it, I should say, in other areas as well, especially in what we call level 2. And those with the categories that are right there. But I think Phil gets to that point, might be on the very next slide, and I can come back and tell more. Yeah, I'll get one more, Archie. Yeah, okay, now Philip is talking about the number of children we have in each category. So you can see some are masked. Some of those are actually zeros. We don't have any children in that, but they're also masked if they're under 5. So you might remember, I can see Pretty studying this. You know, I can see some of the numbers have increased. That could just be the cohort of children you have. I remember one year in the district, for some reason, we had a lot of children coming into the district in kindergarten with autism. Like the early learning world warned us, they're coming. And so the year before we got ready, it was a bit of an anomaly. So you can see the total numbers of children there. So we've got total, we're saying the difference, the total of 560 total designations in the district. That's massive for a district our size, really. And I don't mean that as we have lots of children with problems or anything like that. But what I do mean is the accountability to those children is massive, from the designation to the service delivery to the IEP to all of it. So I'm really proud of the work we're doing in that area. Anybody have a question about any of those numbers? Okay with that. You probably can't see them.
Actually, Marilyn, I have one.
Okay, I don't know why I keep looking up there. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
It's okay. I was just curious how long it takes for assessment for some of these students.
Okay, so all of them, all of the children who have special education designations must be identified with that need through somebody who is specialized to do that. So I know this is a long way to get around to it. So we have our school psychologists who can do a lot of this, but some of the things have to be identified by outside people. For example, autism. Our psychologists cannot make the diagnosis of autism, so they have to go to an outside, we'll call it an agency, but an outside clinic or hospital where they can be diagnosed. So some of those, you probably hear some of this in the media, some of those can take quite a long time. So when we talked earlier about the system has to be able to respond to all the children. So we might have somebody in our school that hasn't been designated as having autism, but we still have them in the school. So we still are going to be building plans around them. So we have to have staff address that. And sometimes there are times when parents aren't, you know, they're watching their child develop and they think there's maybe something going on, but they're not ready to take that next step for a diagnosis. So we've got those children in the school. So that can take quite a long time. Now, sometimes we get questions like, you know, my child's on a wait list for a psych ed, you know, they think they have a learning disability, or they might have any number of challenges in schools. And some of those can be fairly lengthy wait lists. You know, it could be even a year. Whereas the ones that are like, for example, there is legwork to do for autism in our schools, that would be done right away. Or if a child came in with suspected Down syndrome, the school-based paperwork would be done right away, and then the extra work done at the hospital. So sometimes it's on an emergent basis, but we will hear from families often that, you know, they're on a wait list and they'd like to have it happen faster. Some parents do take their children out for private assessments in that period of time, especially in the area of learning disabilities. Does that help, Rebecca?
Yeah, it does. And I kind of understood that a little bit prior, but this is making it more clear. And I just know I hear from parents and stuff about how long it can take at times.
It can, and another thing, I'll just use the example of learning disabilities again. A child with, let's say, a reading disability that's in the classroom, that school-based team and all the people at that table probably can figure out how to address the needs of that child before they get their assessment. They're like specialists in reading, but a parent, reading disabilities, but a parent will want that confirmation. Maybe concerned they won't get service. I'm not sure, but the schools can handle those kinds of learning needs just in basically in tier 1 of their service delivery in their schools, right in the classroom. I'm probably taking up all of this meeting.
I don't know, it's great, and it's very useful information.
Okay, Harshie, we'll go one more. I think we're getting there, guys. Okay, so now there were some specific questions around how much money is spent. And this is, of course, where I said we're not doing a really deep dive into a forensic audit. But what Philip's wanting you to, the public and the people here to know that the ministry funds all of that you saw, the designations, the number of children, that comes to about $6.5 million. And as you know, we're in a decentralized model here. So the funding for children with special needs goes directly to the school for the system of that school. So none of that money, for example, the $42,000, that all goes directly to schools. But in addition to that, the district tops up. It tops up those things for example, Celeste asked. It also tops up in level 2 that's only funded at $21,000 because there's some children in there that have the same level of need as someone who's in level 1. So the district again tops up to say we have a system for doing that, and how Philip organizes that, like who gets that extra funding, so that it actually comes up to more like 6,700,000 and perhaps more. And then we wanted everyone to understand that doesn't include all the district-based staffing. That doesn't come out of the special ed funding. It comes out of the per pupil and what we used to call the block funding. So we've got teachers that are visually impaired. These are specialists, deaf and hard of hearing, speech paths, occupational physical therapist and the school psychologist, and he's put in the approximate FTE or inclusion support team, and that would be some people who would be working at those in-class supports. Even his own self, the director of instruction and child and youth care workers, etc. Okay, so there's, you can see there's a fair amount of funding that goes into this particular area. Is that, how are we doing there, Archie? Okay. That's the last slide. So this is the funding side of things. The other side is the service delivery, and that's probably, you know, the flip side of this coin. Okay, so you've got the money now. How are you doing it? And that's where our special ed manual comes in, where you must deliver these types of things. But that's a different conversation. So, okay. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions for Marilyn?
Oh, Mr. Nicholson.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the public know that I think what might be helpful down the line is that I know that Philip Clark and others are working very hard on a parent guide to inclusive education in SD 48. And when that document is complete and shared, it will provide the much deeper dive we've been talking about in terms of that service delivery model, as well as some of the higher level information about how funding is used in schools to support all students. So I would just ask for a little bit of grace and patience as Phil completes that document. And then I'm sure that will be an item to do a brief overview of at a upcoming board meeting. And I'm sure we're looking forward to more conversations about that document when it is complete. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Marilyn? Okay, I guess that's it, Marilyn. Thank you again. That was very, very thorough and informative. So that brings us to our CEF spending update. And Danielle, that is yours.
I'm actually going to get Elena, our finance director, to speak about that because she's done most of the work on it. So go ahead, Elena.
Thank you, Danielle. Classroom enhancement funds are important. The district submitted to the Ministry of Education initial request for CEF fund, and the total amount of funds requested was 6 million. This CEF fund is the purpose of it is to address additional teacher staffing required due to due to the diverse student needs, reduced class sizes, and complex class composition. And breakdown of 6 million funding request is as follows: 1.5 million is for enrolling teachers, 2.7 million is for teachers, librarian, and teachers of special education and English learners, language learners, and 1.8 million is for complex class compositions as per collective agreement. So the request for this year for Classroom Enhancement Fund is 0.4 million higher than last year we submitted. And this is because of combination of higher staffing requested, teacher staffing required, and as well as higher salary and benefit cost for teachers. And there will be further reporting on this Classroom Enhancement Fund mid-year, and as well as actual year-end reporting in July 2022. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Did anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, not hearing anything. I guess we can move on to our quarterly financial report. First quarter, and there is a copy attached. Danielle?
I know my name is down for this, but I'm gonna let Elena speak to this again because she did a lot of work on getting this ready for the ministry submission. So she knows this better than I do. So go ahead, Elena.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Danielle. The attached report, Jerry report has been submitted to the Ministry of Education in October. It's for first quarter in September 2021. The report shows revenues and expenses for 3 sources of funding, operating, capital, and special purpose. And this first quarter report covers only preliminary funding. This means it doesn't take into account actual enrollment as per last day of September. And it doesn't take into account increased provincial per student funding. And for the period July, August, and September, total funding from the ministry was 12% of the expected total funding for the fiscal year of 2021-2022. That is why we can see actually deficit on operating fund and capital fund, which was offset by 5 million surplus of operating fund surplus from the previous year, bringing us to the total of 4.2 million surplus. So as report progress is each next quarter reported, so the funding will be, and timing of the funding and expenses will straighten up. So that's all. Any questions?
Yeah, I noticed that when I was reading the report, and I just wanted to understand, so the deficit, my kind of interpretation of it when I looked at it is that it wasn't expected because of, I'm not having it in front of me, because it was accounting for, can you help me out with the word I'm looking for, Danielle?
I'm not sure, but basically the reason for the deficit is that we haven't received funding for our enrollment growth this year yet. So although at this time when we submitted it, we haven't received the funding for it as of yet even. So we sent our submission to the ministry and we haven't yet received the funds, although we are already incurring those expenses for the extra enrollment increases. Does that explain it?
Kind of, it would be, my battery has died on my computer, so I can't pull it up in front of me. What I was wondering is if it was expected, and because you couldn't go on with $1 million deficit indefinitely, you only have $5 million to offset it. So it was expected, and it isn't expected to continue every single year indefinitely. That's kind of what I was getting at. Understanding that it wasn't a surprise and that it's not going to happen again. This is just for the first quarter, and we will come out of the deficit once we get that funding, which we haven't. So I think this is typically what happens. And this is what where we were looking at, like last year at this quarter, we were also sitting in deficit until we received that funding. Yeah, so it is expected that it's going to look like this probably every first quarter of the year, and then we will end up getting that money later on. That's helpful.
Yeah, that is correct. That our funding for the first quarter is usually half of the normal quarter funding because it's just beginning of the year.
Thank you, guys. It's a little bit of a different format too than how we've looked at it before. So I was trying to think of it in terms of how we've looked at it, but anyway, thank you for answering my question.
Okay, were there any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, then I thank you for the presentation, Elena. And that brings us to our District of Squamish Childcare BC Spaces allocation. And Danielle, is it you speaking to it or?
No, actually, I'm just going to introduce Sarah McJanet from the District of Squamish, who we've been working really closely with on a joint venture to get some childcare spaces. So are you there, Sarah? I think she's there.
Hi, everyone.
Sarah,
Hi, welcome.
Hello. I have some slides to present. Thank you so much, Danielle. I have some slides to present so I can share my screen unless Archie was planning to show them for me. I'm happy to drive the slideshow. So I'll just share that screen just a moment.
You might require authorization. Oh, there.
Oh, perfect. Thanks so much. I think that Archie is sharing that for me. So that's great. Hi to the Board of Education. My name is Sarah McJanet, and I'm a senior planner with the District of Squamish. Thank you so much for welcoming this update on our partner work and reapplication for capital childcare funding for co-locating a childcare facility at Valleycliff Elementary School. Mayor Elliott sends her regrets tonight. She wanted to be here with me tonight, but she's hosting a session with our new Squamish Youth Council, which is a worthy distraction tonight. So she sends her regrets. For background, the District of Squamish and SD48 have been engaged together for some time, along with community partners, the Health Authority, our Child Care Resource and Referral, Squamish Nation, and Sea to Sky Community Services over many years doing long range and health planning at the community level. And so this has included early childhood development focus for strengthening our policies and plans, early learning, active transportation, and childcare access in the community. We really value and appreciate the fantastic support that the school district and board and your staff have provided towards improving access to care and early learning, but also how that early learning is integrated with community facilities and sites within Squamish. I have a set of slides that you've seen on the agenda. The last slide in the deck details and provides a snapshot of where we are at with childcare. But firstly, I'll just say that, the need for quality, affordable space in our community is deep. We have a growing population of kids under 12 that continues, and we do have a deficit in the number of licensed spaces in the community across all age groups, but most significantly, there is a deep need for infant and toddler spaces. So provincial capital funding is critical for us to support space creation on public lands. And that's in addition to the new spaces that we leverage at the community level and secure through development at rezoning. There are childcare integration at all elementary schools in Squamish, and by our count, there's almost 140 spaces on school sites at this time. That represents about 17% of all licensed spaces in Squamish. And the municipality is also working towards integration of childcare space within community facilities. And for example, at the future Brennan Park facility expansion in the medium term. In the short term, Valleycliff Elementary School offers a really important opportunity to co-locate some childcare in a standalone facility at that site. On the capital funding front, we've previously applied for UBCM and Childcare BC New Spaces funding. We were not successful in our last round of application in 2019-2020. It's very competitive. There's high need across the province, and the ministry has been prioritizing spaces within projects that can meet a cost per space threshold to try and maximize the number of spaces. This third call and grant opportunity provides another chance for us. It's only available to public and nonprofit sector applicants. It will provide 100% of the funding. There's a funding ceiling of $3 million per project. And the district will be the lead applicant and having capacity to administer the grant and manage the project build out if we're successful in getting this funding. And subject to the funding, the new facility would be supported by a long-term land lease agreement between SD48 and the municipality. And then we'd also hold an operating agreement with the nonprofit operator and partner in this project, which is Sea to Sky Community Services Society. And there's also a minimum 15-year operating commitment. Just next slide, please, Archie. Hopefully that slide can advance. Perfect. Thank you so much. In terms of the site and the project details, this is Valley Cliff Elementary that you can see in the image. We are proposing a 36-space multi-age childcare space. It would include 12 infant toddler spaces plus 24 spaces for kids aged 3 to 5. It's a standalone facility, about 250 square meters, and it's proposed for the southeast corner of the site, which allows for some neighborhood access via Hemlock Avenue. So there's actually a secondary access to the school site. So this is a great fit. In previous years, we have invested and done some geotechnical review to establish the flood construction level and flood proofing measures. And we've done updated costing for this project. The permanent building that is proposed is similar to the childcare facility that was built at Garibaldi Highlands Elementary, if anyone is familiar or has toured that site. It's a basic building that meets licensing and accessibility standards, and materials and finishes are standard. The total cost for this project and for the building is $2 million. Or $55,000 per space. And that includes all the significant sort of geotech flood proofing costs for the base building, furnishings and fit out, as well as landscape area and contingencies and cost escalation. As required by the province, we're providing a lot of documentation around this costing for us, and it will form a part of the application. Next slide, please, Archie. We also have a draft plan that this shows a little bit more context for Valley Cliff for people that are interested. You can see here the existing elementary school in the middle of the image. There's the location of the new portable classroom that's been installed on the north side of the building. And then the new childcare facility is shown in the rectangle in yellow, just approximately. The proposed location will not displace any playground areas, nor the existing living classroom, wetland, and edible schoolyard spaces that are also located at this school. And subject to successful funding, we will be engaging with the school community and the neighborhood through detailed design and building. Then next slide, please. Thank you so much. In terms of timing, as you can see, we're submitting our application imminently next week, and we expect a funding decision by March 2022. If we're successful in the funding, we would work through the land lease and operating agreements between the partners in the spring. Then we would get into detailed design and permitting in spring 2022 and construction over approximately 1 year with anticipated completion by September 2023. So we're optimistic that we will be favorably considered this time around, and we're definitely going to keep you posted on the progress. So we'll see how it goes. And then the final slide, if Archie could advance kindly, thank you. Just in closing, this is just to leave you with some information about our current childcare access rate in Squamish. It remains around 21%, meaning that we have 21 licensed spaces per 100 kids aged 0 to 12 in the community. So this is an overall access rate across that age group, but by cohort, we have the deepest need for childcare for school-age children. That's about 10% access rate. And then comparatively, the infant toddler access rate is 20%. So that just underscores how critical childcare is in terms of integration in early learning and public facilities. We have a target access rate of 30% that we want to achieve by 2029, which means that we're wanting to increase our inventory overall. This access rate was determined in 2019. And so we're wanting to increase our inventory by about 720 childcare spaces in the community overall in the next decade. So that's 72 spaces per year. And we're tracking our progress annually towards this goal. So that hopefully leaves you with just a little snapshot of where we're at with childcare action planning and our partnership project. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd welcome any questions that the board may have at this time. Thank you.
Did anyone have any questions or comments?
It's Rick. I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Rick.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for coming. That sounds like a daunting number, the hundreds of spaces that we need in the next decade. Could you describe what, if any, are the longer term plans over that decade in order to try and fulfill that need?
Thank you so much, Trustee Price, for this question. Absolutely. It is a large number in terms of the overall number of spaces that we're trying to achieve in the community, and that's commensurate with the growth that we're anticipating and projecting. Childcare space integration, we're working towards integration within neighborhoods. So a large portion of childcare space is delivered within family childcare facilities. So we've done a lot of work around regulation and trying to support childcare operators at a family, in-home daycare. So that there's a lot of the infant, toddler, and multi-age care is happening at that level. Beyond in-home kind of residential-based childcare, we're looking to really focus childcare growth and spaces within neighborhood nodes in the community. So that's a big part of our overall community planning to increase the number of childcare spaces that are walkable within our neighborhoods and close to employment centers. So in the downtown, at the oceanfront, in neighborhood nodes throughout the community. And also on civic sites, so public lands, and then also in partnership with learning sites and schools throughout the community. So those are kind of the core areas. There's a lot of long-term facility master planning that the district has been doing. And even though we don't have a lot of land, we do have some major facilities. We're trying to get it all into our long-term financial plans. We have a lot of our facilities are at the end of their useful life. So we're struggling, just to accommodate critical core facilities, fire halls, public works, diking, all the rest. But childcare is very much intended to be co-located in a bunch of core municipal facilities as well. So it's a long road ahead, but we've done a lot of work in the last few years to set ourselves up to understand what the need is, work with partners in the community, and then work with the development community through private development and securing sites as well. Long answer. Sorry about that, but hopefully that helps answer your question.
It does. Thank you very much. And it was a complicated question, so thanks for the answer.
Thank you, Sarah. Was there anyone else that had any questions?
So this is Celeste.
Okay.
So I think the proposal looks wonderful. One of the things that stood out to me when I was reading it prior to the meeting is the issue of parking on that particular site. So it wasn't clear to me whether or not access would be off Hemlock or if it would be through the existing parking for Valley Cliff Elementary, which can be tight. I don't know if you've ever been to that site, but it really is a struggle to find parking there. So what's the plan?
Thank you so much for that question, Trustee Bickford. We have done a lot of review of, and together with School District 48 staff, looked at the various school sites. The benefit with the Valley Cliff site, having that secondary access via Hemlock Avenue and also a municipal lands road right of way, but also the park. That allows for walkable access, but then also additional parking in that area. We wanted to take some of the pressure off of the Westaway entrance and also the parking area. So we've done a lot of review also at the municipal level through our Safe Routes to School work within the community, and know how tricky it can be with parking, circulation, drop off. So that's definitely been front and center. And we're I think that the opportunity at Valley Cliff with that secondary access will take some of the pressure off with parking and drop off, but also the opportunity to provide more childcare in neighborhoods close to home. And Hemlock Avenue is identified as a neighborhood way, which is a street that is having traffic calming and infrastructure and safe routes to school support. So we're working together on that.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Is there anything else from any other trustees? Okay, not hear anything. I'm just curious about the cost that you would be looking at for the users. I'm just thinking about affordable childcare and such.
Thank you for that question. On costing, so the long-term operator, Sea to Sky Community Services, will be setting fees, and those fees are pretty much commensurate across their different programs. So in terms of costing, we are trying to work to get fees as affordable as possible. The good thing is that with public sites that are secured and identified compared to some operators that are on private sites where they don't have, there's no sort of public body that's controlling the rate. There is some insulation there in terms of the fees. We're offering this to a nonprofit operator to run the childcare, but we're keeping, it's basically provided to the nonprofit with all of their sort of maintenance and operational costs, but there's no sort of added levy around fees like you would see maybe in a private setting. So trying to keep fees reasonable for sure.
Yeah, that I was curious about that because I know they were Sea to Sky Community Service had to close their site in Pemberton a few years back, just because they couldn't afford to keep it running. So I was just curious. So thank you. Did anyone else have anything? Okay, well, Sarah, I thank you very much for attending tonight and for the presentation, and I couldn't agree more that it's a much needed service for sure.
Thank you so much to the board for your time tonight.
Thanks. Okay, Danielle, did you want to add anything on that note?
No, basically, just some extra background. This grant that they're applying for, I think the deadline is this week or next week.
16th, she said, yeah.
Yeah, the ministry has said that they're only accepting applications from school districts themselves. But in our case, we're asking for an exception because we're such a small school district, and we're asking for the District of Squamish to apply on our behalf. So yeah, so that's exciting, and it's awesome that the District of Squamish has been able to take that on behalf of both of us, right? So really appreciate all the work that Sarah's and her team has been doing on this.
Oh, it's fantastic. The amount of legwork that goes in the background there is incredible. So thank you. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, then we can move on to SD 48 and SD 46 EC training partnerships update. And Chris, I see your name there.
That's right. So this is a really great segue into this. So I wanted to share with the board and the public that last month, our district, along with Sunshine Coast, ST 46, put in a joint proposal. There was an opportunity as received from the Ministry of Education to submit an expression of interest concerning early childhood education dual credit opportunity, whereby if districts were able to find a post-secondary partner and put forth a proposal to the Ministry of Education, who has partnered with the Ministry of Children and Families and Advanced Education, we would be considered for a grant to provide some dual credit opportunities for our secondary students who may be interested in becoming early childhood educators. So again, our district, along with SD 46, in cooperation with Capilano University, just learned that we were successful in our bid for putting our proposal forward. We have a approval in principle, so it's early days, but we will be learning more about funding and what the relevant requirements and policies and rules and whatnot will be in the near future. But I am really proud to say and really proud to announce that we are partnering with SD 46 and Capilano University, and we will be able to, between us, hopefully offer to interested students in September of 2022. So we have lots of time to prepare and get some of our students excited. The opportunity for 10 students to have 2 courses paid for and their post-secondary credit granted through our cooperation, so that we can give our students a leg up in completing their ECE, and then hopefully come back to our districts to be hired by us to fulfill these early childhood education centers we've been speaking about. So this is also in line with our Seamless Day project. So just a reminder to the public that we have a pilot project that will be happening at Brackendale Elementary in one classroom to provide some childcare spaces for before and after school care for Ks or K1s, depending on how many spaces we get. And so all of this is all coming together quite well to recognize the need in our district, but also provide support for families and opportunities for our students in the future. So stay tuned for more information. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Did anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, I just have one thing, Chris. I'm just I think these are wonderful opportunities that we're providing to our students. We've done this with teaching and with I think our EAs and our trades workers and now EC. It's fantastic. So thank you.
Rebecca, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, I'm just wondering, are the courses going to be offered in the schools during the school day, or are the students taking those courses at other times?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we have an opportunity to develop what is going to work best for our kids. So when we put the proposal forward, we ensured that we included a hybrid model, so that, for example, if it was offered in Tazeel, which is also an exciting opportunity to be in partnership with the Liwat Nation, then we could have that digital, so that students at Tazeel or students from Pemberton could join, as could potentially students from Howe Sound or Whistler Secondary School. So we are that's sort of next steps in terms of what makes the most sense for students, whether that's happening during the day as part of their school day, or as their additional course out of the timetable, which of course we do in this district. And we will work with our students and our partners in order to ensure that we have a system that meets everybody's needs.
Thanks for that, Chris. I just have one follow-up question, and it might be a little bit premature. Do you have a criteria for the students that will be able to access the program?
Right, so not at this time, where we just received their approval in principle, so we'll be working towards that. And it will really depend on how much interest there is. Of course, we're hoping to open this up to both grade 11 and 12 students. With folks in grade 12 would most likely get preference, because we would hope to continue the program in subsequent years, so that everybody who would like the opportunity is provided it. But again, those details will be worked out, and there'll be more opportunity to learn more.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Chris. I think that's a fantastic program. I think it's a really incredible opportunity for our kids, and I think it's going to be a really nice opportunity for our communities as well, to have more people interested in the field of early childhood education. So I am super happy to hear about that and looking forward to hearing more about the progress of that program. So great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Was there anyone else? Okay, well, thanks, Chris. That is very exciting for sure. Okay, so this moves us on to, there's some attachments there for your review, the media report, field trips. Doesn't look like we have any correspondence. Items for discussion, policy motions, and nil, action items nil, items to be brought out of camera. Didn't we have an item? Is that where we put the motion that we're bringing out?
Yes, the vaccine mandate.
Do we post the motion? Sure, I just speak to it.
We can post the motion and then you can also speak to it too, if you want, Rebecca.
Sure. I can just do that now. So as the public may be aware, all school districts in BC were asked to consider a mandatory vaccine for our staff. We have been, since this announcement was made, our district has been in conversation with with the BC School Trustees Association. We've been talking to other districts, participating in multiple meetings and discussions, and some reports from the Ministry of Education, some Q&A, and then we have discussed it at length as a board, and considered this, and at the end of it, we passed a motion today to not proceed with a vaccine mandate for our staff. Some of the reasons for this is are the conversations that we've had provincially. Also, and then we've had discussion with our local health authority. We're looking at the high rate of vaccination amongst our staff, and we're looking at the at no transmissions within our schools. Marilyn had made an update earlier saying that there are cases within our schools, but we're able to identify there's no transmission. And also considering that that many of the other districts are making similar announcements as well. So we've considered all aspects of it, and have decided not to proceed. Did anyone else have anything to add or any follow-up questions or comments? So the motion is there. It says that the Board of Education not proceed with the COVID-19 vaccine mandate for staff. I guess that is it for that. Hearing and seeing nothing. So we don't have any bylaws. And as for questions of clarification from the public, as mentioned earlier, we asked that people, if anyone had any questions regarding this agenda, that they send it in. But I have a couple of questions from a previous board meeting that I'd like to take this opportunity to respond to. And this was submitted by Jen Sharf regarding trustee training. She had asked if the committee of the whole would consider including an anti-oppression training for all trustees. And I just want to let you know, Jen, that the board recently completed a performance review last year in the 2020-2021 school year for ed sessions. This is not identified as a topic as of yet. However, the board will consider diversity training as a future topic. To let you know that district staff continue to be engaged in professional learning on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that trustees conduct themselves with this in mind at all times. The next question was from Jen Sharp again, and this is regarding inclusion. The question was, will the committee of the whole be willing to put forth a motion to form an inclusion education committee? Oh, you know, I'm just going to change my page. Sorry. At the board level. And the response to that is to please be assured that I have every confidence that the two trustees sitting on the DPAC SD48 Inclusion Committee will effectively represent the board. When trustees sit on committees, they're also responsible for reporting out to the board to ensure that all trustees are aware of what was discussed in committee. And I don't see any other questions. Danielle, are you seeing anything?
I don't think there's anything. Let me just quickly check my emails, but the last time I checked like a minute ago, there wasn't anything. So.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing else.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So that concludes our questions of clarification from the public. And looks to me like we have completed the agenda at hand and that the meeting be adjourned. And I thank everyone for